installment of conversations on climate change in the Pacific. We are very lucky today to be joined by a very special guest who's going to tell us a little bit more about his experiences surrounding climate change in the Pacific. So please welcome Gareth Quity, who is joining us from Baku at the moment. So thank you very much for coming to talk to us today. Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you do, where you're based, and why climate change is so important to you.
Thank you so much, Kate, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to able to talk to you this evening about my experience in climate change. And my name is Gareth Quity, and I am based in the Solomon Islands. I'm the climate justice lead for Oxfam in the Pacific, and my work is really overseeing the climate justice program within Oxfam in the Pacific, and we are having different climate change programs within the Solomon Islands, Fiji, Tuvalu, Papua New Guinea. And so basically my work is to ensure that we see, our partners who is leading the work on climate change are able to deliver on the work on the ground in terms of the climate justice work that we are doing in the Pacific. So yes, well, I've been in the climate change space for almost more than 10 years now. And prior to working with Oxfam, I was also working for a World Bank initiative, climate change adaptation initiative with the Solomon Islands government. So I would say most of my work was around climate change.
So I'm guessing in that decade that you've been working in the space, you've been able to observe quite a lot of change in terms of how climate change is affecting the region and your home country especially. Is there anything that you've seen as sort of a major change in terms of climate change in your home?
Yeah, well, as we all know, climate change is a planetary and climate crisis. And we cannot just say, or we cannot continue to ask how climate change is affecting us in the Pacific. Just look at the Category 5 cyclones in the consecutive years that we had. For example, Cyclone Kevin, Cyclone Joe, Winston, which are wreaking havoc in the Pacific. And, the damage is already, amounting to billions of dollars in destruction of our economy. You can also see, sinking islands that we are experiencing already in the Pacific, the loss of food crops, flash floodings, and lack of, water. These are some of the impacts of climate change that we already are faced here in the Pacific Islands.
It's, I think, something that maybe people don't see from far away, and I'm curious to see what your perspective is in terms of you being at Baku at the moment, and whether you think that the global leaders are really sort of seeing the urgency of what's happening in the Pacific, and whether you think that they're acting on it in the correct manner.
Well, from my own perspective, I would say global leaders are still seeing and doing very little to see agency of climate change. Well, this is evident through the negotiations that we had here in Baku at the moment. In terms of quantum, we are looking for quantum in terms of climate finance. We are also discussing about, loss and damage. We know that in COP28, they've already agreed to a facility, but we need fundings to ensure that this, work implemented. Even accessibility to, climate financing for Pacific communities. So with this, I would say I think, the global leaders, really, though they see climate change, but, I would say yeah, they still seeing very little agency for us. In the Pacific.
Do you think that maybe something that might help is ensuring that those voices from the Pacific are being represented, are being heard on the global stage, and not just in terms of the global stage, but that it's trickling down to people around the world who maybe aren't at these negotiations or aren't fully aware, but that might see a snippet of something and go, okay, I've heard this story, and we've experienced flooding here in Barbados, and I understand that it feels the same way in Fiji, for example. Do you think those connections need to be made?
Well, I think Pacific Voices are ahead in climate negotiations, I would say. They're having strong stance on the issues and priorities that they have. However, when it comes to negotiations, it's always a collective decision. So, sometimes our priorities may either collectively agreed in the room or not. And I think I would say the International Court of Justice and Advisory Opinion, ICJ, is a classic example of an initiative that is born from the Pacific and that is being adopted in the UNGA. So something that, actually comes from the Pacific. So I would say that I think we are ahead here in the Pacific.
Well, that's definitely a little bit of good news, if ever there was some in all of this. Obviously, we're coming at this from the perspective of a Commonwealth associated organisations. I wonder if you could shed some light on whether or not you think that there's more that the Commonwealth nations, the organisation itself, could be doing to better support the Pacific in facing the challenges that climate change presents.
Yeah, I think Commonwealth needs to better support Pacific Island countries, but I would say providing more finance, ensure finance accessibility made easy for us. I think that's always an issue when it comes to accessing climate finance. And also we want, finance that comes in a form of grant and not loans. Loans is always, debt for us in the Pacific Island countries. So a form of grant would, really good for us. And especially to support areas like climate loss and damage. I would say we want to ensure that, loss and damage is in addition to adaptation and mitigation. So if, the Commonwealth countries can also support to ensure this becomes a third I would say an important area for us, not the Pacific, but other least developed countries and countries that are affected by climate change.
I definitely agree. I think there's much to be said for needing to reform the way that we approach climate finance, and that it's not a system of putting small island developing states, big ocean states, into debt in an effort to try and save themselves from something they never caused in the first place. So I definitely agree. I think that a lot of people have an image of the Pacific at the moment of it struggling with the impacts of climate change. And for those who take the slightly less optimistic view, there is a little bit of concern around people being displaced from their homes, both internally and externally within the Pacific. Do you think that's going to impact on the people there? And how do you think that that's the future potential of displacement might affect people in the Pacific in terms of their cultural identity and their connection to their homes?
Well, I think Pacific Islanders, like any other ethnic diversity in the world, are people with great connections and linkages to culture and environment. Hence, when it comes to climate migration and displacements, it will certainly be a hard decision anyway for vulnerable Pacific Islanders to make. So, as relocation means, they have to ensure that cultural identity is not lost through the process, because when you have to say we have to, relocate to someone's country or land, we have to ensure our identity are being, maintained and practiced whilst we move. to a new place.
I think Fiji's had a few examples of that, of being able to relocate communities relatively successfully. But you're definitely right in terms of it needs to be something where we work to make sure that people can maintain who they are, their language, their customs and culture. Most definitely. In the spirit of hopefully more resilience, do you think that there are any strategies that have come out of the Pacific or come out of your home nation which have been really successful in terms of creating more adaptation measures? Is there any sort of in particular initiatives that you think have done really well, that you think sort of show an example of great success in the Pacific?
Well, I think apart from resilience initiatives and fundings, we know that there are some initiatives and fundings that are meant to address to adapt to climate change. I think Pacific people are resilient people, I would say, and I'm proud to say that Pacific people has the traditional knowledge and audacity to cope with impacts of climate change. So though we might name a lot of different initiatives that are successful in the Pacific, but I think it also comes down to the traditional knowledge that the Pacific Island people have to continue to fight climate change over the years. So I think that's what I'm proud of.
I think it's something that you should be immensely proud of, and I think the whole Pacific should be, that you've managed to hold on to that, where many nations maybe haven't. So I think it's fantastic, and there's a really important part of that in terms of dropping that down to the younger generation and the importance of that younger generation coming through, helping to build up that resilience and take part in climate action. Do you think that the young people of the Pacific have a big role to play in that?
Well, I think yes, younger generations are the next leaders, I would say. And for me, I already seen them playing a critical role in advocating for climate change across the Pacific and globally. In saying that, as I've said earlier on, ICJO is a classic example, and I have in the Pacific, which is led by the youth, and it's gaining momentum as well with other youths globally. And I want to encourage the youth to keep what they're doing to advocate and address climate change.
Sort of coming towards the conclusion of our little chat, I thought maybe it would be good for you to tell us maybe whether you think that there's something that individuals around the world could be doing to support the Pacific, to show our backing towards you and to show that we care.
Well, I think for me, I would say there are ongoing advocacies around the world. Physical and digital campaigning is going as well, where individuals or groups are doing. There are funding initiatives as well, from individuals like philanthropies to support Pacific Islands. Even there are individuals trying to make alliances amongst themselves, collaborating as well on common issues like climate change to support Pacific Island countries. So I think for me, I've already seen individuals, work or forming islands to support the climate change issues of the Pacific.
So just to finish off on a hopefully a very happy and light note, is to ask you what keeps you hopeful and motivated in the face of climate change. What makes you think, okay, we can tackle this, we can move forward?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I think for me, I would say never give up. The world leaders, are just people like us, and if they have the human element in them, then they will see what climate change struggles and challenges that we, the Pacific Islanders, are facing. You and me should be an agent for hope for the next generation. So I think this is what keeps me motivated, even though in the face of climate change.
Well, But I thank you very, very much for coming and having this little chat with me, and hopefully we will see you again. And thank you everyone who's watched our little video, and you know where to find us on YouTube and Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. So thank you all, and we hope to see you again soon.